Well, welcome back, everybody. We're here with another Bow Hunters of Wyoming podcast. Today I've got a pretty cool guest, Alex Aguirre. Alex is a Wyoming Community Partnerships Coordinator. I think I got that right, Alex, with Theodore Roosevelt Conservation Partnership. And he is also our Area 2 representative of Bow Hunters of Wyoming. And no one knows Alex better than Alex, so I'm going to let him introduce himself and kind of tell us what he does with both of those roles. So, Alex, welcome, man. Thanks for coming on.
Alex. Yeah. So, I'm just a born and raised Wyoming guy. A little bit younger, 27. But I was born and raised in Powell, Wyoming. I took a 4-year hiatus to Laramie, graduated with a degree in outdoor rec and tourism management. I kind of knew that wildlife's been my passion. As soon as I was old enough to drive, I was always in the mountains. That was kind of the barrier to entry for me. I grew up hunting with my dad, followed him around the mountains, chasing elk and whatnot. But once I could drive, it was game on. It was any spare time I had, I'd skip school to go shed hunting or hunting. The mountains were and still are my home. So
yeah,
that's where that's the only. But I also grew up with horses, and so I like to leverage that too for my mountain endeavors. Spend a lot of time on horses back in the summer and the fall.
Heck yeah. So did you bring up the age thing just to make me feel old? Because, dude, most days I feel pretty young, but I feel like you just had to throw that in there.
I had to throw it in there. Honestly, though, I put down a lot of miles, and I'm starting to feel it. I don't recover like I used to, and I don't know if I've gone too hard or what the deal is, but I used to be able to do back-to-back big hiking days, and now it's a lot harder to get going, and I'm not that old.
Well, let me tell you, it does not get any better. And sometimes I forget how old I am. I'm 34, and I feel like the late 20s is when I started to notice that, oh man, I don't feel that good after I do like a 3-4 day backpack trip, and then I think I can turn around and do it again. It's like, man, that's not the case anymore. I think I've got 60-year-old knees.
Yeah. Okay, that's good to hear, because I was curious. I was afraid to ask people, did your late 20s, did everything start to hurt? Did your knees start to hurt? Did your back hurt after doing what you like? But I guess it's normal.
Yeah, but you take care of yourself, right? You look like you're in pretty good shape. Like, you watch what you eat and whatnot.
Yeah, I try to. I fluctuate a lot, honestly. I don't know if it's good or bad, but I shed hunt a lot, and then that translates to summer scouting and then into the fall season, and I'll fluctuate like 30 pounds on average a year. Like by the end of hunting season, I'll be down in the 170s, and then start a shed season, I'm back in the 200s, and then I work it all off again. But I'd be afraid to know what would happen if I started at 170, because
I know. Because you're kind of like me. Like, I'll quote unquote bulk up in August, and I'll just pig out because I know come September I'll usually lose. I'm not quite as crazy. I don't think I drop 30, but I'll drop like 10 to 15 pounds. Just because.
Yeah, I don't know if it's a good thing. That's what I've noticed the last few years is I gain my weight in the winter, and then I burn it off spring, summer, and fall.
Yeah. Well, you and I were, so everyone who's listening, we were talking about shed hunting before we actually started recording, and man, it is amazing how many miles stack up when you're shed hunting. What's your average shed trip, would you say?
It's over 10. I'd say 15's a good day. These days, 12 to 16 miles is pretty good. I did put down a 20-mile day earlier this spring, and I felt it the next day.
Oh, man, I bet. I feel it just listening about it.
But, yeah, if I broke it down, I'm over 200 miles this year, and I've done about 20 trips.
Nice.
I usually break 10. And a couple of them are really short, so it kind of skewed me to 10, but I'd say an average solid day of shed hunting is 15 miles, but I also try to leverage what I can, and so I'll go out after work some days, and I'll hike from like 5 p.m. till 8 or 9, and then just walk out in the dark just to get extra miles and be shedicated or whatever they say.
That sounds exactly like what I did last night. I went into the office early and then got out early, and my son and I went out, and I think we were out in the woods by 2, made it back to the truck around 8 o'clock. So just, yeah, any I think I'm a lot like you in that aspect. Any opportunity I can get to go out and look for antlers. For me, it's just another excuse to get out in the woods, learn the animals, learn the area a little better.
And that's what I use it for. It's to get in shape. It's to scout. I mean, I love looking at antlers and collecting them. I don't know that it's maybe the best use of my time because the antlers just sit in a stack, but they're cool to look at once a year when I pull the stack apart.
Yeah, you're preaching to the choir. So I think you've answered this question, but do you ever sell them or do you keep them all?
I usually sell whites and chalks just to cover gas. I keep all the brown, all the sets, but we were talking about this earlier too, how we log how many miles we hike and what we find. I also log how many trips I take to the gas station and what that costs me, and then that's just my benchmark. I sell just enough to break even, and I call it a day.
That just sounds depressing why you would track that, man. But I get it because now you know how much to sell. So my family, I've got 2 sons, my wife and I, and we're pretty fanatic when it comes to shed hunting. We love getting out in the woods, and we don't sell a single antler, so our house looks like a museum. But we've got a trailer outside with all the whites and chalks, and then in the house we keep all the browns, and then each year we'll make a Christmas tree out of them. So it used to be like we had to put all the sheds in the tree, all the brown elk, moose, deer. Now it's just all the brown elk, and we can hit the ceiling. Like you said, it's cool to pull it out once a year and look at it and then put it all back in the pile.
Yeah, I wish I'd never had started selling, and I really don't sell a lot, but in college I sold a couple because I was a college kid and needed some money, and then, it was either, buy a trailer to store the whites and chalks or sell them, pay for gas, and not have to store as many.
Yeah, well, you're doing it a lot smarter than I am. Do you? Is there any antler you prefer? Like, do you like brown elks or deer, moose? What's your go-to?
I'm an elk guy. I like my mule deer are my favorite thing to hunt. They're my favorite thing to pursue for sure. And I found a lot more mule deer when I was down in college in Laramie. But up in my country, the mule deer are pretty spread out, and a lot of them winter on private. And I just find that elk are more worth my while. And they tend to be on public for me, so I just don't mess with the deer as much as I used to. It's fun finding a big deer antler, but a big elk antler is different. I mean, you can feel when you've got an elk antler or 5 on your back, where a deer, not so much. So I think I prefer elk. We don't, and I don't really go look for moose up here.
There's something about having a pack full of big old elk sheds, and then when you're coming back into town and they're sticking out of the back of the truck, then you got to go stop at the gas station so people can see it. What's the best shed you've ever found size-wise? Elk.
Last year was a really good year for me. I picked up 2 sets that were about 360.
Dang, that's awesome.
Yeah, and very different sets. One was a young bull with long tines, good long main beams. And the other set I have from last year was just a heavy, compact, just old, gnarly bull.
Super
He's living all
massy.
And just the mass. Like, he doesn't look like, in the pictures, he doesn't look like a 360 bull because he just looks like an average little 6x7. It's still a good bull, but you put a tape on him and all those mass measurements add up, and he went 360 for me. He's just gnarly. His bases are noticeably bigger than any of the other sheds I have. And I've got some good sheds, of course, and he's different.
That's cool. That's way cool. Was it a brown set, too?
Yeah.
Oh, that's even better. It's hard enough to find a brown set, let alone one that's 360. That's huge.
Oh, yeah. I usually have a goal of 2 sets per year. 2 good sets is always my goal. Whether I hit it or not, I think that's all I'm after. 2 good sets, and then anything else is bonus. And so I barely got that this year. I do have 2 sets. They're not as good as years past, but I'm not going to complain. Like, still, like you said, trying to find a brown set these days can be tough.
Yeah, it can be. It can be tough. What's a good day for you, numbers-wise? Like 5, 10, 15?
I heck a lot of miles, and that's why I find a lot of sheds. I wouldn't say I'm a good shed hunter. I just spend a lot of time doing it. There's a lot of days I don't find anything. There's a lot of days I find 1 or 2. There's probably only 2 or 3 days a year where I break 5, honestly.
Yeah.
I don't find quantity, and I don't care. I really go for quality, honestly. And it's all just because of the miles. But I always keep my head up because, like, the day I found my biggest set last year, I hadn't found anything. It was a long day, and I wasn't even in elk sign. I was in no elk sign I should have tucked tail and went back to the truck, and all it takes is like one ridge, and that was the only ridge that had sign on it. Like, I got onto this ridge, I found a little micro ridge that this bull must have liked, because that's where he lived, and that's where the set was, and there wasn't any other elk sign the whole trip in there and the whole trip out. So it can change fast, and that's what keeps me going on the big long days of, all the vertical gain, and when I'm tired and my feet are wet and the wind's howling. I mean, it can change pretty fast, but I don't find a lot.
No, you bring up a good point though, and that's something I tell myself, both with bow hunting and with shed hunting. Like, when you're having a long day or when you're having a long trip and it starts to turn into a grind, man, all it takes is one, right? All it takes is that one shed or that one set or that one opportunity on an elk or a deer. It's just because sometimes those days get long, and people see people who find sheds, or they see the pictures on Instagram or Facebook, and they're like, oh man, this guy finds so many sheds, or they found so many sheds, they had a good trip. Man, you didn't see the 19 trips before that when we found 0 sheds or 1 shed. But just like hunting.
Yeah, you're right. That's the name of the game, is they don't see all the work you put in all the other days or even that day beforehand. They just see the picture on Instagram, which, it's kind of a weird day and age where we live in, but right now. But yeah, it's the same thing with hunting. Like you said, you can grind for days and days and not be into anything, and the one bull could walk right in front of you, and it can change like that, and it usually does for me. I mean, I've got multiple stories where I should have packed up and quit, and some guys would, but I stuck it out, and then I come home and I've got the picture and I've got the story for everyone.
And they go, oh, it must be nice. Yeah, it is nice, but the 2 weeks before that were not that nice. But there's a lot to be said for just talking yourself into staying on the mountain or staying on the ridge, whether it's bow hunting or shed hunting. And man, it's easy to grind 3, 4, 5 days and go, oh man, I could go home right now and have a hot meal and sleep in a real bed or what have you, but I can guarantee that I'm not going to kill anything if I do that. Same thing with shed hunting.
The longer you stay out. One thing I found this spring for shed hunting as I age is trailhead, just basically one step at a time. There's been days where I wake up and my body's telling me like, you don't need to go today. But I find that like, well, if I just go for a drive, then maybe I'll change my mind. And if I can get to the trailhead, usually I'm like, well, I'm here. Then I hike, and once I get halfway to where I want to go, I'm like, well, I may as well go where I was planning to go. So just one step at a time, because it's really easy to get up and look at the weather and any little thing that's like, I don't know, it might rain today, or it might be socked in, or the road might be drifted. Whatever it is, it's easy to find one excuse and then call it a day. But I find that if you just do one step at a time, I usually end up on a 15-mile hike when I woke up and like, I should take it easy today.
Yeah, that's how it goes. That is one of the things, though, I think that you can kind of separate, I would say, hunters, and I'll lump shed hunters in here as well, because I know a lot of people make fun of shed hunting, participation trophies, people call it, which is whatever. I think there's a lot of benefits to it. You're getting out in the area, you're learning the terrain, you're learning their habitat, you're seeing the quality of animals in there, and like you said, it's just fun, but you can kind of separate the good shed hunters from the really good shed hunters, kind of like the good bow hunters from the really good bow hunters. Because usually that, I guess for me, like that motivation carries me pretty easily for the first few days or the first few miles. And then when it starts to turn into a grind, it's like, okay, this is where we're going to separate the people who get the results from the people who just kind of talk themselves into, man, I'll just stay home today. I'll just sleep in today. That's where you kind of see that separation. So, man, before I go totally off the rails and turn this into a 2-hour-long shed hunting podcast, tell me about the Theodore Roosevelt Conservation Partnership and what your role is there and what it does as an organization. Yeah. So we're a national hunting and angling nonprofit, 501c3. I started working for the TRCP in May of 2023. So this month will be 2 years, and like you said, I'm the Wyoming Community Partnerships Coordinator. So I'll take a step back. The TRCP's mission is to guarantee Americans quality places to hunt and fish. Pretty simple. That's what we fight for. That's what we work on a daily basis. And so
we're based in DC. We've got a DC team, and we work on the policy side of things. So we're working with Congress, and then on the state level, we work with not with the state legislature, but I mean, we're down at the legislative session, I guess. And so my role as the Wyoming Community Partnerships Coordinator is more a grassroots level. So I just try to get our members and just the general hunters and hunting and angling public. I try to get the general hunting public to just be a part of the conversation, just to have a seat at the table and just be involved. You know, a lot of the stuff that we love, the hunting, the fishing, the public access, outdoor recreation infrastructure, a lot of that goes through public comments, and there's a big public process with anything, as you probably know. And so when there's new proposals, when there's work being done, there's usually a public comment process. There's usually some sort of public comment portal or a meeting you can show up to testify at, or someone you can call just to express your opinion. And I just work to make sure that hunters and anglers are being involved, just so our voice is heard. Because if our voice isn't there, if we're not at the table, we're on the menu, right?
That's a good way to put it.
So that's at the bottom line. I mean, that's what I try to do, is I try to work with just everyday hunters and anglers and get them to show up, get them to be a part of conversations.
Would you say overall there's a lack of involvement from hunters and anglers, or almost like we take what we have for granted almost and don't realize the work that goes into keeping it?
Yeah, I think, and this is coming from almost a personal perspective, because I tried to take part in this public process even before I worked for TRCP. I was a college kid at the Game and Fish season setting meetings in Laramie, you know, and usually not surrounded by other college kids, usually surrounded by, you know, older folks, or just
right.
Yeah, not my demographic right there, right then and there. So I'll say, especially from a Wyoming perspective, we have it good. I mean, our hunting is top notch. I've hunted other states, and Wyoming's, hopefully this doesn't get too far out, but Wyoming, we have it pretty good with our general elk, our general deer, the amount of tags we can carry each year, the amount of public land we have to chase all these critters on. Like, we have it pretty good. And I've found that hunters and anglers get fired up when things get taken away or changed, and it's usually after the fact. It's usually like there was a public process, but we've had it good. We've known that we've had it good, and we don't get mad until it changes, and we're like, "What the heck?" But the process is our
surprise, right?
You know, we weren't there around. That's what I feel like, especially for Wyoming, is guys get pretty fired up after changes go through, but they're not the ones that were part of the process. They didn't, and I'm not blaming them. Like, they had it good. That's all they knew, and they didn't even know sometimes that some of these proposals were out. So yeah, I feel like generally speaking, for how many people hunt in Wyoming, the crew that shows up to a lot of the meetings is pretty small.
It is, right? You tend to see the same people over and over again, which is good for that core group. Yeah, great. They're involved, but I'm curious the impact we could have if we had bigger groups of guys, you know, showing up everywhere. Oh, 100%.
And really had a voice throughout the state. I think that would, and I think you saw that with the Type 9 meetings, maybe.
Yeah, more so than I was anticipating. But again, I guess before I became involved with Bowhunters of Wyoming, I'll fully admit it, I was one of those people who took for granted what we had and the opportunities we have in the places we have to do these things. So I'm from Minnesota. Originally, I moved out here to hunt elk in 2012. And that was the only reason I moved here. I just knew the elk tags were $56 or whatever they were. And I'm glad you brought up how good we have it in Wyoming. You know, Bowhunters of Wyoming, we're obviously Wyoming focused, so I do like to hit on that because, like you, I hunt all over the West. My wife makes fun of me. I've got a Google spreadsheet that tracks all my applications, what states I have points in, how much I need, what my odds are for each unit. Like, it's bad. And seeing these other states, especially some of them on how they treat their residents, comparatively speaking, man, we've got it made. We live in a state where we can hunt bear, mountain lion, elk, deer over the counter every single year. Man, are you kidding me? That's pretty awesome. Spring and fall bear, we can still bait. And we don't just have these arbitrary seasons, but we actually have, in my opinion, and where I hunt and what I see, fairly quality hunts, even our general hunts and our over-the-counter hunts. And none of it's guaranteed. And I think that's where mobilizing more people and becoming aware of these issues is really important because, man, it could change overnight. And we talked about this, I think, with Levi Carey on our last episode. I oftentimes lose sight of the fact that hunters are not the majority. We are the minority. But so often we're echo chambers, right? Because I hang out with hunters, so I just assume everyone's a hunter, but that's not the case.
Yeah. No, you're totally right.
So we
just got to be a part of the stations because stuff's always changing, and if we're not at like I said, if we're not in the room, then the things that matter to us are not getting voiced.
Yeah, and you brought up a good point too about how, and again, I used to be one of them, and sometimes I still am when I'm not as aware as I should be, but oftentimes we don't get motivated or, I don't know what the word I'm looking for is, activated until something's already done. Whereas, man, there was plenty of time before to jump into the public comments, to make your voice heard, to sign a petition. You didn't have to wait till it was all done. And I think that's a hard habit and pattern to break for a lot of people because we're kind of just used to having things pretty good. But now I'm just speculating, so feel free to rein me in whenever you want.
Yeah, and I don't think it's not intentional. I mean, I think part of it is just public education. Folks don't know what's going on sometimes, and it's hard. It's even, I mean, I work in this field every day, and it's still hard for me to keep up with everything that's going on. You might have some state land proposals over here, and the forest is working on a different proposal in a whole nother part of the state, and the Game and Fish is always working on stuff. A commission meeting, every month or every other month, and it's hard for me to stay on top of stuff. Like I feel for the everyday hunter that's got a family and a full-time job, and coaching their kid's soccer game or baseball team. Like it's tough to stay involved, but we can't get lazy because that's when we lose stuff that we care about.
Yeah, it's almost like you have to choose almost like 2 or 3 developments to put your bandwidth on, right? Because each person only has so much time capital to invest and to stay, I guess, up to date on what's happening. Because like you said, it's hard, man. There's a lot going on all the time. And if it wasn't for bow hunters of Wyoming, I would probably miss half of it, if not all of it. So that's where I really encourage people to get involved, whether it's bow hunting or rifle hunting, whatever your thing is, find an organization, see what you can do, get involved, become a member, because these are the organizations that are going to lobby and fight for your hunting opportunities to sustain and carry it on into the future.
Yeah, you're totally right in that these organizations are good avenues just to spread information. Because I sometimes just think about an average. I'm not a hardcore hunter. Maybe just an average guy enjoys going hunting. He's not going to be in the if he goes and buys a deer tag over the counter, hunts a weekend or two, and calls it a year. I mean, that guy. It'd be great if he was involved, but I feel like that's your common hunter, and there's a lot of those, I think. And so, yeah, I mean, it's hard to. I'd wonder how we can get more hunters involved, knowing that we've got some guys that are really hardcore, but then we've also got some guys that are very just, recreational. It's something to do, but they're not the ones that are crunching draw odds every year and
building spreadsheets.
There's, I mean, again, it's like Wyoming has it so good. You don't have to be this hardcore guy to go and have a good hunt, but at the same time, if you just, buy your tag and hunt your normal week like you do, you might not always know what's going on the other 11 and a half months out of the year in the hunting world.
Right. And that's where sometimes I struggle a little bit, and I need to remind myself that not everyone is like me, right? Some people actually have lives and do other things. They don't
exactly.
they don't focus on hunting 365, 24/7. Right. And I think, like you said, that's kind of a really important demographic to focus on and get them aware, because it affects them as well as it affects hunters like us, whatever the developments are in the hunting world, whether it's the Well, Colorado's a great example to look at and see what gets taken away. Washington, Oregon, things like that. And oftentimes, if you're one of those, guys who picks up their general tag and hunts a few weeks of the year, you might not realize that any of that was even in the works until it's too late. And it's no fault of theirs. It was because a lot of this information, and as well as I do, it's not exactly front page news. You don't see it every day when you pull up Facebook, right? You typically only see it A, after it happens, or B, if you're involved with a group like TRCP or Bowhunters of Wyoming or Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation, name your organization.
Yeah. No, the organizations are good ways to spread the information, but yeah, you're not going to find, season date changes or application date changes or anything like that. It's not common knowledge, and it's not easy to find either. I mean, you kind of got to be a student of the game, especially once you start applying for multiple states and trying to keep tabs on everything. Like, it's a lot of work. I'm sure the spreadsheet's helpful. I need to get to that point.
Oh, it's brutal, man. Yeah, I can barely spell my name, let alone track all that stuff.
And I think you make a good point too. In Wyoming, like we're Wyoming, we think that the stuff that's happening in Colorado or Colorado or Oregon or Washington, like, we think we're pretty far removed from that. But I mean, it's one stepping stone away. They take, privileges get taken away in other states. It's just, we're next, whether that's a few years from now or tomorrow. I mean, if we don't pay attention, those proposals go through. Stuff like that happens if we're not paying attention.
Yeah, it's amazing how much gets proposed and gets discussed. In this year's legislative session's a great example that your average hunter probably has no idea how close some of these things came to passing, because, I mean, let's be honest, paying attention to bills in the legislative session is not the most exciting thing in the world, and it does take a lot of time. No. And that's where Alex, I kind of want to segue into your involvement with Bowhunters of Wyoming, not only as our Area 2 representative, but as one of our, I guess, legislative liaisons, for lack of a better term. Would you mind telling us not only what you do as our Area 2 rep, but also as our legislative liaison, one of two?
Yeah. So I, because of work, pay quite a bit of attention to the legislative session. So it's pretty easy to give Bowhunters of Wyoming an update, because I'm living that world for, the 4 or the 8 weeks that we're in the legislative session. And I'm sure I could do a long legislative podcast alone on the whole process. And that's part of my work is hunters and anglers need to realize that the Game and Fish has power to change things, but the legislature also has power, and more power than the Game and Fish. And so sometimes the legislature can make laws that just direct the Game and Fish to do things.
And oftentimes the legislature is not acting with any sort of biology-based data. Am I correct? They're ballot box ideology almost.
They're just, as a blanket statement, most legislators aren't biologists, right?
Right.
And so we think, and we as in Alex, I don't know, I'm not speaking for TRCP, but just hunters in general, we should support Game and Fish Department making those biology-based decisions, and try to stay away from that in the legislature, in my opinion.
Oh, I would just love to second that opinion, because I've got a lot of opinions, and I share a lot of them, and, the legislative session affected, my real job quite a bit, but sorry for jumping on this soapbox a little bit, but we pay a lot of money to people whose job it is to implement, monitor, and manage sound wildlife practice. It's probably in all of our best interest to let them do their job within reason, right? But that's where I get concerned about some of the bills in the legislative session material that comes that, well, the first one that comes to mind for me is the mountain lion bill, where it would no quota on mountain lions. That was concerning. And I know BOW took a stance against that, but that was just an example of how there was really no biology-based management behind that. Correct me if I'm wrong, but at least that's how I interpreted that bill.
No, you're right. And I think in Bowhunters of Wyoming perspective, those were kind of our most concerning bills, were the bills this past session that directed the game and fish to manage whether it was mountain lions or grizzly bears in a way that just kind of demanded them to
arbitrarily do it.
Right, not based on quotas or numbers or populations. And that's really scary. I just don't think we want to go down that slippery slope. I mean, the game and fish, I like what they do. They're dedicated to managing the wildlife, and I think it's really important to keep that power in their hands.
I would agree wholeheartedly. And just to touch, I guess, a little bit on some of these bills that were proposed and what was brought to the legislative session, I think a lot of it was brought from places of well-meaning. I don't think anyone was nefarious or was trying to attack our wildlife management, but it just goes to show you, even if you do come from a place of a good intention, if you're not, I guess, a subject matter expert, for lack of a better term, it may have detrimental consequences, especially when those who are trained, whether they're biologists or wildlife management, say, hey, that's a bad idea, and this is why. I think it would behoove all of us to listen to them.
Right, I agree. And you also have to remember that, we have a citizen legislature, so being a legislator is not their full-time job, and so they come from a lot of different walks of life. We've got ranchers, businessmen, all sorts of different careers that make up our legislature. And, not all of them are hunters, and actually, I think a minority of them are hunters. Just like the state, we're right. A minority population, and it's the same thing at the legislature. And so, when we talk about bills and legislation that affects hunters, there's a lot of education that needs to happen in Cheyenne, because to bring all these legislators up to speed about how this certain bill would change things, because a lot of them don't know, and even everyday hunters sometimes don't know all the complicated laws behind everything. So let alone legislators that have never hunted before, don't know how wildlife management works, and they don't know about the North American model of conservation and wildlife management.
Yeah, another great point. And a citizen representative body is a really neat ideology, and I think it's neat in practice. But like you said, that's not their full-time job, and when you're only in session for X amount of weeks, and you're processing bills on top of bills on top of bills, and you're reading all these proposals and bills, it's almost impossible to really dive deep into each one and to get a firm, sound grasp on it, and let's say hyper-focus on what you and I are hyper-focused on, which is wildlife conservation and hunting. Are they going to pull all these bills and cross-reference them with the North American model of conservation? Probably not. Would we like them to? Of course we would. But that's where I think organizations like TRCP and Bowhunters of Wyoming come into play. And I think we did a good job this year, and so did TRCP, of, making our voices heard, and not just saying, hey, we don't want this because it's bad, but saying, hey, we have concerns with this legislation, and this is why. This is why it may have a detrimental effect on X, Y, or Z, where it's not just pounding your fist on the table and saying, stop this.
Yeah, and like you said, there's over 500 bills. I mean, and they're working on everything from healthcare to property taxes to water rights. I mean, they work on everything down there. So it's really impossible to expect all the legislators to know everything about how the game and fish works and everything about how the license allocation system works. And so I think just generally, it's just better to keep wildlife type decisions in out of the legislature and in the game and fish's hands.
I think at the end of the day, that would be the best move there, because Wyoming Game and Fish has Wyoming wildlife as their primary focus, right? What's good for the game and fish is typically good for the North American model. Now, do I agree with everything Game and Fish does? Of course I don't. I'm a human being. I have my own opinions. Most times they're wrong because I'm not very bright, but the important thing is what's good for them is typically good for us as hunters, for the most part. And sometimes that would get lost when you have it introduced in legislation versus a game and fish order or movement. But I guess I do want to give our reps some credit and our senators some credit, because it's easy for me to pick one bill, and I'll use the mountain lions again, and to hyper-focus on it and say why it should be bad or why it would be bad. But I'm not reviewing 500 bills like they are, from, like you said, everything from property taxes to wildlife management to water rights. Like their bandwidth it's insane.
Education, yeah, you name it. And I'm with you. I'm not here to knock the legislature. They had a huge session and a huge task in front of them, and that's their job. So not bagging on them. We were mostly, bow hunters of Wyoming was mostly just concerned about keeping the wildlife management with the game and fish. But the legislature is also important. I mean, they pass good bills that protect stuff that we love, that help fund stuff that we love. So for example, Senate File 88 is known as the large projects funding. So it funded 8 different large conservation and habitat restoration projects from the Wyoming Wildlife and Natural Resource Trust Fund. And this type of bill, it's needed, and it basically gives the stamp of approval to use funds that are already set aside in a trust fund to tackle some of these big conservation projects that are happening throughout the state. Another example is they removed otters as protected animals, and the game and fish couldn't do that without the legislature. But basically, it's not open season on otters. It was just that there was no good way to remove them during conflict, and so when the otters were causing damage, or in one area they were causing problems, and they were kind of needed. The game and fish's hands were tied, so they couldn't remove the otter without them being removed as protected animals. And so it was something that the game and fish, I don't know if they asked for it, but they needed the legislature to change statute to be able to do their job better. So they also did some fishing stuff, but it's probably not pertinent to bow hunters of Wyoming.
No, it is important to note, though, that I think we as Wyoming are in such a good spot when it comes to hunting and fishing opportunity, thanks in large part to our legislature and our past legislature. Otherwise, we wouldn't be in the position we're in today. And I know you and I have talked about it, and I'll beat that horse to death because I never want to take for granted what we have here. And for me, it's really important to realize that, man, we've got it pretty darn good, especially when we look at our neighboring states who are making all sorts of decisions, some good, some not so good. But yeah, I think we're in a good position.
I want to say too, not all bills are necessarily bad or necessarily good for hunters and anglers. I mean, there's some that it's just important to be part of the process, just to have your opinion out there. Like the legislature works on, preference and bonus points. I know a lot of states are changing things like that, and that was a bill. It didn't go anywhere this year, but it was a subject that was talked about. And, I know hunters on both sides of it, that some would prefer to leave the preference point system for sheep and moose in place, and others would prefer to do an overhaul and change it to bonus or change it to all random. And that kind of decision happens at the legislature. So that's another reason, like, it's important to be involved. They do that kind of stuff. They also set license prices. So lately the game and fish, they're having some budget problems. Hopefully I can say that on the record.
I don't think it's a secret.
They're looking for ways to make up for to make up for the increasing cost of everything. And so, some of those things are like application fee increases, which no one wants to hear, but the game and fish can't just go out and do that. They need the legislature to remove caps or extend the cap or change things. And again, everyone has an opinion on that. So there's just reasons why it's important to be involved, whether it's a neutral bill, a good bill, or a bad bill.
I'm glad you brought up the preference points issue, because I think that's one of the huge things that makes Wyoming such a fun state to be a resident in, because I have as much opportunity as you or anyone else to hunt any elk area in the state or any mule deer area in the state. This is just my opinion. I am so glad that our elk, deer, and antelope hunts aren't governed by points, because you look at Colorado, and I know a lot of people that live in Colorado. Even as a resident, there's some units that they'll never be able to hunt in their lifetime because of the point creep. Where are my draw odds great for a lot of the good units? Of course they're not, but I have a chance, and that's pretty cool. I would rather have a 5% or 1% chance than the knowledge of I'll never draw this tag ever. So you're saying there's a chance? That goes a long way with me.
Yeah.
And that's
the preference points. I'm with you. I much prefer random. Now this is not, TRCP doesn't work on that kind of stuff. That this is just coming personally. TRCP is mostly, habitat access and migration focus. So we mostly stick on those areas when we come to talk about the legislative stuff. But on a personal note, I'm with you. I think we've learned from other states, and the preference point deal is, it sounds good, but once you get down that road, it's really hard to turn back. And so I'm a big supporter of completely random, and I honestly like the excitement of never knowing if you're going to draw.
Oh, I love it.
I mean, that's great. Like when you're going to draw something based off points, like, yeah, maybe you can plan better, but it's not exciting. It's not as exciting when the results come out as something when you draw a random mountain goat tag. I mean, that's awesome.
Do you know what that's like? Can you tell me? Because I have no clue what a random mountain goat tag would be like. Hopefully someday. Yeah,
my sister drew a moose with like 2 or 3 points. So,
oh, nice.
It was awesome. My dad's drawn a bison. My grandpa drew a mountain goat. I'm like, what year is going to be my turn? Because I've been on some. I've got to do it, but I've never been the one with the tag.
Sooner or later. But that is a cool thing, and I'm so bad at it. Like that excitement of drawing. I just put in. You're going to laugh at me. I just put in for a Kentucky elk tag. I think I have.
Oh, there you go.
Well, it's $10. I'm like, why wouldn't I? Either way, the $10 goes to conservation and improving an elk herd in Kentucky. I've never even been to Kentucky, but my odds were like 0.1%, whatever it was. But either way, it's exciting, right? It's one more tag to look forward to not draw.
Right. Someone's got to draw, So it's always better to have a chance than to not put in. But yeah, I don't even want to know how much I've donated to various state conservation programs in application fees or tags. I've punched one out-of-state tag, and I've had a lot more than one.
Yeah, it's a sobering numerical figure to track, because I know on my spreadsheet that I keep track of my tags, I do have a running tally of how much I've donated to conservation across the United States, and there's a reason I locked that spreadsheet from my wife so she can't see it, because it's a lot of money.
Yeah, that's wise. Yeah, I don't want to keep track because I don't want to know. It's getting up there. Every year it's gaining.
Yeah, it is. It is good though that it kind of, I know it almost becomes cliche because it said so much that hunters are the biggest drivers of conservation. But right there is a great example of how a tangible example of how hunters push conservation and support conservation and wildlife management because of the thousands of dollars we spend each year on trying to get tags. That goes back to habitat, access, wildlife management. It's a bit ironic because our whole goal at the end of the day is to kill an animal, but no one supports animals as much as I would say hunters do. And most of us are animal lovers, or at least respect the animals to a degree where we want to see them thrive. We want to see them do well in their habitat, and we do it on a very real level with all the money we contribute. Just don't tell my wife that.
Incredible. I mean, hunters and anglers, we pay for wildlife that we don't even hunt. No,
right.
We pay for that. It's a good cop out at the end of the day when I don't punch a tag. I'm like, well, it was for a good cause,
Yeah, it makes me feel warm and fuzzy.
It's a tradition worth keeping alive because we fund wildlife conservation for a lot of species, a lot more than the ones that we hunt.
100%. And without the funds, derived from sportsmen, I think the management picture would look very different. And you would have to, you would either lose that sound management practice or you would have to find those funds elsewhere. And you touched on it a little bit earlier with Game and Fish, and, nothing's getting cheaper. Everything's more expensive, and you're constantly trying to find ways to deal with that. My real job, I'm the sheriff of Carbon County, so I'm responsible for our whole budget for, the sheriff's office, so jail, patrol, dispatch. I can't just pass a cost to a consumer and charge more to offset my budget expenditures. I have to find ways to stretch a buck, and Game and Fish, at least one of their tools is license prices, or when you look at the state legislature, license prices, application fees. And if we have to pay, and this is just me, if we have to pay a little bit more for a license or an application fee, but it goes towards keeping what we have and improving what we have, man, I'm all for it.
Yeah, I'm with you from a personal standpoint. I don't remember the figure, so don't quote me. But something like residents haven't seen a license increase in since 2008 or something. It was a staggering number, and it seems like the trend is to jack up the non-resident prices, which I don't really like that. I mean, I think you could do a lot more with just, some slight increases to resident prices just to keep up with things. I mean, a $62 elk tag to go hunt some great areas. I mean, we're getting a deal.
Smoking deal.
I would be willing to pay more, for the experience I get every fall as a resident. For 60 some bucks is crazy.
It really is, and it's something I hope I never lose sight of how awesome that is living out here. It is I talk about taking things for granted quite a bit because I'm scared one day that I will, and I hope I never do. But man, I talk to a lot of non-resident hunters that I run into out in the woods, and this is like their once-in-a-lifetime hunt or once every 5-year hunt. They're spending thousands of dollars. And it's like, man, I can go down to City Market and spend $62 on an elk tag. Are you kidding me? This is unreal. And I can get a bear tag at the same time, and a mule deer tag at the same time, and a turkey tag, and a mountain lion. I mean, it's almost too good to be true. But again, I come from back east, right, where I grew up in Minnesota. I moved out here when I was 22. So I got a little bit of a different perspective where I lived in a state where it was, the hunting opportunity was not nearly what it is here. And when I did come out here and hunt, it was an $800 tag or whatever it was. Do I like, the costs of everything going up? Of course I don't. No one does, but like you said, we're still getting a pretty damn good deal.
Yeah. No, and I don't want to price anyone out, and I think about the future and the younger generation. I want to keep it reasonable, but I mean we also need to keep the game and fish running, whether we like it or not. I mean, I love the game and fish, and like I said, I mean, you don't have to agree with them on everything, but I think they're hardworking folks that are doing their best. So
100%.
We need to fish if we're going to hunt. We just got to find ways to keep them going with the cost of everything going up.
Yeah, and it's tough. And as a government employee, we don't run on hopes and dreams. It is hard to find funding. And I know there's a common misconception that, the government is rife with money. That may be true for the feds, but I can tell you it is not true for state and local government, game and fish included. There's not a whole lot of fat to trim. Yeah, and the more efficient those operations run, the better funded game and fish is. It usually means we have better wildlife management practices and better opportunities.
Yeah.
When it comes to the legislative session this year, was there anything that really stood out to you, whether it was a good bill or a bad bill, or the 10th Circuit ruling on corner crossing, anything that really jumped out?
Just not a lot went through. That at the end of the day, I mean, there was just so many bills introduced that when I look at the list that actually passed, just pertaining to wildlife, the list is pretty short. They did make some amendments to make wildlife conservation license plates easier to get.
Oh yeah,
that was another good one. I talked about the large projects funding. Some fishing stuff. I could talk a lot about all the things that didn't go through, but they didn't go through. What do you do?
Is there one you would pick? So out of everything that didn't go through, if you had to pick one to look at and go, what in the world? Or just to discuss, which one would it be? Because like you said, nothing really passed that directly affected bow hunters.
No, not really. Nothing game changing. No, something that I honestly think the points, the preference to bonus is probably, I don't know. Personally, I just see it as a topic that needs discussed, because it just seems like we're getting further and further down this road. And I mean, I shouldn't be for it because I've got 15 points. I should just say, let's stick it out with the system, because in odds I should draw, but thinking about my younger counterparts or people that don't have any points, like, to jump in the game now is daunting. So, I mean, I shouldn't be for it, but I'm for it. I'm for some sort of modification to the preference point system. Yeah, I mean, that's the most intriguing to me. There's a few that were floated to help with that game and fish budget deficit, which was license application fee increase, and then they also had a bill that was trying to exempt game and fish from paying property taxes on some of their properties, but it didn't go through. So I'll be curious to see if the game and fish floats any other ideas, or if any of those come back around, because that's another theme with the legislature is just because a bill doesn't pass this session. I mean, you'll see bills, sometimes every session until, it passes or the game changes or something.
Right.
So a lot of bills, it's not goodbye. It's just, I'll see you later.
I'll see you later. Yeah. No, that's a good point. I mean, you look at whether it's the Property Tax Reduction Act or the repealment of gun-free zones. This wasn't their first crack at it this year. They had both been introduced before. And I do see the preference point and bonus point. I see that continuing. I don't know if your opinion differs at all, but I think that's definitely I'll see you later. I'm not going anywhere.
Yeah, and that one is just intriguing to me just because I do know people on both sides, and it is such a complicated issue that, people have invested in the system for so long. To up and change it is tough.
It's a big deal.
But kids jumping in now, and if you actually crunch the numbers, their odds of in their lifetime of ever drawing a sheep or a moose is bad, really bad. So, yeah, and then it's really just a decision of what's fair, and
boy, that's a
pretty
hard
arbitrary. It is fair
term to define, isn't it? Yeah, I don't know the
really
answer. That's for sure. Because point creep is inevitable. There's no way around it, and there's enough case studies out there from different states where you can look at them and go, this is what's gonna happen. It's just the way it is. And is switching to the bonus point system the right way? I don't know. I'm a big believer in having firm convictions that are loosely held, which means a good argument can pretty much sway me either way. I'm pretty ambivalent. So I see both sides of it. I'm not willing to die on either hill on that one. I get the pros and cons for both. I think we could make both work. But like you said, that entry level now for your younger people, if you want to draw a sheep tag in your lifetime, yeah, I mean, those odds are not going to be great.
Can you still hear me all right?
Yeah, I can hear you just fine.
Okay. Sorry, I just had to plug the phone in.
No, you're good. Yeah, I would say not a whole lot changed. I guess bow hunting, minus the 10th Circuit corner crossing decision, but that had nothing to do with the legislature. That was a decision at the 10th Circuit level.
Yeah, there was a corner crossing bill. It never was introduced.
No,
it was kind of in the drawer,
which doesn't surprise me.
Yeah, but I mean, now that we have the ruling,
that's the next best thing.
Bow hunters, we've put stuff out on it already. Bow Hunters of Wyoming has, so yeah, I'll be curious to see what happens this fall. With it doesn't, I don't have any corners that I've been eyeing anyways, so I don't think it'll affect me.
No, I'm with you, and I mean, I live in Carbon County, which was kind of ground zero for the whole corner hopping debacle. But obviously, as a sportsman, I'm a believer in public access for public land, just on its face, right? But I would get scared of shooting an animal on a public square and then having it die on a private square. That would concern me. As I come from it, obviously, from that bow hunting perspective, they don't always just fall down. So, but I got enough spots that are in the forest where I'm not too worried about it. But I do think it's a win overall for public land access, as long as we respect it and don't ruin it.
Yeah. I mean, those landowners, not anyone in particular, just landowners in general, they do a lot for Wyoming wildlife, and we can't alienate them. They provide all sorts of habitat, especially in the winter season. I mean, we just got to keep them in mind. I don't want to drive any wedge there, because I don't think sportsmen will benefit from that at all.
No, not at all. And I'm glad you brought that up, because I would say that sportsmen and landowners often share pretty much identical value sets when you look at the large scale, the macro, right?
Right.
And it doesn't do any of us any good to pit one against the other. And I've talked to a lot of landowners out here specifically about corner crossing, and I'm not speaking for all of them, obviously, but it seems like the majority are totally fine with it, and they have been fine with it. And they say, yeah, we really don't care as long as the gates are closed and people aren't cutting fence. It's not really a big deal. Obviously, you'll have exceptions to that. But you'll also have exceptions on the sportsman side, too, where people do cut fence or leave the gates open or what have you. But I think it's in everyone's best interest to just get along as best we can and kind of find that common ground. Utilize that new access responsibly. But like you said, I'm curious, too, to see how many trespass calls we get this year to the sheriff's office for people that are corner crossing. Because when they initially got found...
You'll hear about it.
Do what?
You'll hear about it in particular.
Buddy, I will. It's surprisingly been quieter than I anticipated. So when they first got found not guilty here in Carbon County, I thought we were going to have a flood the next year. Surprisingly, we didn't. I think I had one call that year because I think most people are doing it respectfully, and they're just going about it the right way. And then on the other side, you get the landowners who are, yeah, that's cool. You're going from public to public. I don't really care. So hopefully it continues like that. We have that good relationship. So, yeah,
I'll be curious to see what conversations it opens up. So we did some public land access listing sessions in 2023, and down in Rock Springs, it was cool to hear that, like, I don't know if you're familiar, but like the Rock Springs Grazing Association has a bunch of, they manage or own a lot of checkerboard. Basically, I found out that some of that checkerboard it's already open to the public and the private. That was news to me because on a map it looks all checkerboard, but come to find out there was kind of already an agreement there that it's open to anybody. Well, another thing we learned there too is that, corner crossing, sometimes the corner is not the best spot. And so, if people were just to talk to the landowner, sometimes they were like, well, it'd be more convenient if you just drove through my gate and parked, here out of the way or something. So,
right.
Just trying to keep those kind of things in mind, and that, maybe sometimes just talking to landowners and asking for permission to go through, or, what works best for them might save both parties, time or frustrations than trying to corner hop your way a long ways.
Right. Well, and it shows that mutual respect too, where, hey, because even if you give someone a heads up and say, hey, just so you know, I'm gonna cross a corner on your property, like you said, well, why wouldn't you just drive down here and go through the gate? Like, it's a lot easier, because you will find those landowners. On the other hand, you will find them that say, no, good luck, or we'll take a picture, what have you. And I think that's where it's really incumbent upon us as sportsmen to do it the right way and almost go out of our way to make sure we're kind of staying dialed in so we don't lose that access. Because just because the 10th Circuit ruled the way it did now doesn't mean it's going to always be that way. All it takes is a motion at the state level and a bill introduced, and we could be looking at a very different access picture down the road, which might not benefit sportsmen. So, well,
yeah, but personally, I'm a big wilderness backcountry guy. Hopefully corners don't really matter to me where I like to recreate.
No,
thank goodness.
Yeah, and you don't have any corners in your county, do you? Comparatively speaking, not like Rock Springs
checkerboard.
Yeah,
there's some corners, but not like miles and miles of checkerboard or anything.
Yeah, because that can get maddening sometimes when you look at like you said, the miles and miles of it, and just know, oh man, there's elk out there, or what have you, and I don't think I can access that. Whereas now, now you can, and I guess just because the 10th Circuit ruled that way, I think there was a misconception that every single person's going to go across a corner and it's going to be madness. But that's not what we've seen down here. I think the people who are going to do it are going to do it, but a lot of it is like, it's still a really long ways to get into good spots. So you're hopping 2-3 corners,
a lot,
and then you finally get there, and then you hunt, then you got to hop them all out. It's a lot of work.
Well, it's some work.
Yeah, that's why I like you said, I like the forest, I like the wilderness areas. That way I know I can chase that bugle as far as I want to chase that bugle, and I don't have to worry about jumping a corner or hitting private. I can just keep chasing. But
that's what I love to do. Yeah, when it's just you and the animal, and you don't got to worry about fence lines or private, or you can chase them as far as you want.
Yeah, there's a lot to be said for that, and that's another thing Wyoming's really good at. Not just the wildlife management portion of it, but the access we have to chase these animals. We've got it pretty good, comparatively speaking. We've got a lot of public land. When you look at a lot of other states, we're doing well. And again, that's one of those things, though, that could go away if we're not careful and we don't stay involved and pay attention to what's going on. Well, cool, man. We've been on here over an hour already. I don't mean to take up your whole evening. Did you have anything else? Anything you wanted to share or talk about that we didn't cover?
No, not really. Just give a plug.
Plug away.
TRCP is free. I mean, you just an email and you're technically a member, but it's just like Bowhunters of Wyoming. I mean, I try to send stuff out to keep everyone in the loop on what's going on, what public processes are happening in Wyoming, where you can be a part of the conversation.
You guys heard it.
And if you're listening to this, hopefully you're a Bowhunters of Wyoming member.
Yes.
Maybe shortly after.
Yep. Helps you stay informed, and it helps the bow hunting community get stronger and ensure we protect what we have and improve it for the future. So where can people find TRCP? Is it just trcp.com or .org? And you can find Bowhunters of Wyoming at bowhuntersofwyoming.org. Anything else, man?
Nothing other than more shed hunting or hunting talk.
Heck yeah. If you had one thing to say to the average Wyoming sportsman, what would it be?
I've always told people, and I don't really know where I got this, honestly, but I always told people, like, hunt while you can, like, do it while you can, not so much take risks a little bit, but, I just thinking about the future and looking at other states, I've seen, not saying it's going to happen in Wyoming, but I've seen opportunities either go away or just get harder to, like, for example, out of state tags. Some used to be a lot easier to draw than they are now. And so I've always told people, as a resident, you can hunt deer and you can hunt elk every year. You can hunt mountain lions, bears every year. Like, do it.
Take advantage
Just get out there and do it as much as you can, because you never know when either that opportunity is going to go away or, your life could take that opportunity away. Like, you could get too busy, you could relocate. I mean, you never know what's going to happen. And so I don't know if it's good advice, but I try to live like that. I try to just do what I love as much as I can. So I try to, hunt and shed hunt and scout and, do whatever I can as much as I can, because you never know when that opportunity is going to be different or change or go away.
I think that's fantastic advice. Might not be the best advice for your bank account, but when you die, you can't take it with you anyway, so who really cares?
Right.
Well, a good example of that is Colorado archery elk. Used to be over the counter. I would hunt it every year in conjunction with Wyoming. Well, now they did away with that for non-residents. Now it's a draw only. So I got a lot of, friends and family back east who are like, oh man, how are we going to hunt? Like, we banked on that hunt every year. It was good to us every year. Now all of a sudden that opportunity's gone. And I know people who, kind of like what you're saying, that opportunity's gone now. And all this time they were planning it. They said, oh yeah, we're going to go on that OTC archery elk hunt. It's going to be awesome. This year didn't really work out. So maybe next year rolls around. I'm a little too busy. Still really want to go, man. I'm totally going to go. It's gone now. Hopefully you can draw. Yeah. Hopefully you build some points up, because now it's gone. And like you said, your body might not be able to take the hunt 5-10 years from now. Something might change in your fiscal outlook. Yeah, I'm 100% with that. I would echo that all day long. I do it a little too much, I think, sometimes, but
For sure.
I've never regretted hunting. I've never came back from a hunt, even if it was just an hour away for elk or bear. I've never got home and went, God, I wish I didn't go hunt. That sucked.
Yeah.
Where there's been a few times where I left to hunt early and I went, man, I wish I would not have left early. I wish I would have stayed on the mountain. So, no.
Yeah. I live by that too, for sure. Like, especially the further away hunts, the out of state hunts. It's really easy to tuck tail and head home. And I'm like, nah, because all winter I'll think about how I left 3 days early, and you never know what could happen in those 3 days. So yeah, it's always best to stick it out. And I'm like, I'm with you. No matter how cold or how wet or how tired I got, I never come home, and I'm like, I never wish that I hadn't gone. I always wish I could still be out there. And yeah, I mean, it happens a lot with hunts, especially, and just big physical exertion activities of like, in the moment, you're like, man, this is rough. I'm cold. I'm tired. I'm hungry, whatever. But after a few days at home, like, you get recouped, and like, you forget about when you were cold and tired and hungry. You just remember the cool stuff you saw,
exactly.
The experiences you had. And so, yeah, you always forget about the bad stuff. I usually do.
Yeah,
I'm
with you.
Just stay out there.
The only things I don't forget about is when I regret leaving a hunt early. And, you know, for me, luckily, like, I'm a slow learner 99% of the time, but I was able to learn that lesson pretty quickly. It was a few years ago, but it was the same thing. Cold, wet, tired, hungry, had stuff to do at home, chore list, job, whatever. And it almost is like the second I step in the door, it's like, boy, it should be cool to be back on the mountain, wouldn't it? Here you are at home. That was a good decision, wasn't it? And then luckily, you know, as I get older, I get a little better at realizing that, man, these opportunities are finite. One day I'm going to go on my last hunting trip. One day I'm going to sit on my last bear bait. I'm going to go to my last elk camp. I better take advantage of, you know, every single opportunity from here till then. So
you're so right. And you never know when that last one's going to be. I mean, you know, most people hope it's a ways out, but you never know. And so, yeah, you always gotta take every opportunity you can. And I think what I'm coming to find is sharing that with people is pretty important too, because, you know, being who I am, I would go without anyone whenever and I still do. I still do a lot of solo trips and solo shed hunts, and they're fun, don't get me wrong, but I tend to remember the trips where I shared it with someone, especially someone that, like, means something to you. So, like, for example, last fall, I took my sister, and she drew a decent elk tag. She'd never killed an elk. She killed a moose, but she never killed an elk. So we
go figure.
It was just her and I. We did 2 long weekends back to back, and like, one of the best hunts I've ever had.
No, I bet that was fun.
I don't think about when it's just me out for 9 days alone, but yeah, do stuff that's meaningful with people you love.
Yeah, and do it while you can. You know, one day our bodies aren't going to be able to pack out an elk or hike 22 miles to go find antlers. So do it while you can. And I would caution, though, like, when I give this advice, I could easily talk myself out of a job and being a broke homeless person that's living in the woods because I just did it all the time. So, like, be smart.
Within moderation.
Yeah, within your fiscal means. Otherwise, you can get off the rails pretty quick. But like I tell people, you know, and I'm lucky I've got 2 sons I get to do a lot of this with, and that's awesome. And we talk about, you know, what do you want to do when you grow up and what kind of job and this, that, and the other. And something my dad always told me that stuck with me was, do something that gives you enough time and money to hunt and fish, or do what you love, whatever that is. In my case, it's hunting. So as long as you can kind of support your habit and you have the time to do it, that's a good job. And it sounds like you fell into a really good job that actually mirrors, you know, your lifestyle and your passion, which is awesome.
Yeah, it's nice because it's stuff I care about, you know. So doing it every day it's worth it to me.
Having you in DC for shed opener, though, was not great.
Yeah, I missed the shed opener last week, so still trying to heal that sore. But I'm going to go out this weekend and hopefully make up for it. We'll see. And then it's on to the spring bears. I've never killed a bear.
Really?
Mostly because I always take the bow, and I see plenty of bears, but I've yet to make it happen. So I'm gonna go see if I can pick up any late last minute sheds, and then I'll switch to bears here the later part of May, and then it's on to summer, and then it's just
scouting.
It's just busy. I just once the high country opens up, I just want to be on my horse in the mountains. That's what I like to do. So it turns to scouting and pack trips and translates to the hunting season. They'll be here soon.
Yeah, it's funny how one season flows into the next. You know what I mean? Hunting season goes into late hunting season. And for me, I snowmobile, so then I'm snowmobiling.
Oh, nice.
Then it goes into shed hunting. Then it goes into spring bear. Then it goes into scouting. And now we're back at hunting. And then the cycle just repeats itself every single year. But no, you'll have fun, man. Spring bear's a riot. Do you run baits or you just spot and stock?
Yeah, just spot and stock. You know, a lot of the stuff by Powell and Cody, we can't bait because it's grizzly country. So sometimes I'll make some trips down to places that I guess you could bait. I still don't because it's just so far. So no, I just spot and stock up here and pretty much everywhere. But one of these days it'll work out.
No, that'll be fun. Spring bear's a lot of fun. I run baits out here for spring bear, and it's been pretty cool, especially when the shed season's going kind of rough. It's like, I can just go sit my bear bait, and that's a riot in and of itself. But when are you typically done shed hunting? When do you wrap that up? When it just greens up so much you can't see?
Yeah, that and the heat. I don't like hiking in the heat. I'd take a cold, windy day over summertime heat, honestly. So and usually about this time of year, I don't really shed hunt with the horses much. Because creeks are frozen and snow drifts are deep, and I just don't like messing with that. I don't want to hurt anybody, so I use it as a way to get into shape. But yeah, once May hits, I usually am thinking about putting the shoes on horses, and once that happens, I might do like one or two horse shed hunts just for some leftovers. But I kind of just switch gears into just bear hunt a little bit, and I just want to just cover country and see new country, and
heck yeah,
just be in the mode.
That's half the fun of shed hunting too. Is just a lot of times I'll just pick a new area and just focus on that for the season, and knowing that I might not do very well, but I've never explored this mountain range or this ridge system, so I'm just going to hyper focus on that. Worst comes to worst, I learned a ton about a whole new area. If I didn't find sheds, no big deal. Like I just explored.
I like that.
Yeah,
I like that
it's been a lot of fun.
I've got I've got probably more shed hunting spots than I can hit, and it's funny. I see like there's guys that do like they're both sides of the aisle. There's some guys that just go to their spots and every weekend they go to the same spot, and they always they'll pick up antlers and stuff. But I'm much more like you. I always hit a couple of my old trusty spots, but there's always new spots and new country I want to explore that's on the list. And sometimes it's a giant bust, like the 20-mile day, new country. That was a complete bust.
Was it really?
But you don't find your new good spots if you don't do your exploratory missions, right?
No. And honestly, I've found some pretty cool hunting spots by shed hunting, just picking an area that I knew nothing about. I knew it was winter range, and that was about it. And then I poked around in there, found some cuts, found some hidey holes, found some rut activity, and it's like, this might be a good spot come October if I don't draw or whatever. So, half the fun for me is just exploring, finding new country, seeing new spots. So
yeah, and that's my same MO for at least for elk hunting is I try to hunt new areas. Not every year. I'll hunt. Let me put it this way. I've never killed an elk in the same area twice.
Oh, that's pretty cool.
Hunt area. So I want to hunt as many different zones, especially up by my house mostly, as I can. And once I kill a bull there, then it's kind of checked off.
I like that. I like that a lot.
That's my theme right now. So I've got to hit some of like the easier to draw stuff and then general stuff, and then some of the harder units I'm just kicking down the road. But yeah, I want to keep that going to where if once I kill an elk in an area, it's checked off and I'm on to the next, just to explore new country, learn, new elk and new elk habits. Like, it varies from area to area, what's effective and what's not. That's the kick I'm on now
I like that. I'm going to steal that. I'm going to steal that from you. I'll probably start just in our county. So our county's huge, right? It's like 8,000 square miles. We've got a couple distinct, I call them mountain ranges, but they're not like the mountains you've got down in Cody. They're comparatively smaller.
Mm-hmm.
There's, I want to say 3 or 4 general elk units in my county, plus 3 or 4 draw units. So yeah, maybe I'll try to kill a bull in each unit. That's a really cool idea.
That's what I do. But again, at the end of the day, it's not just to check them off the list, but it's mostly to explore a new country and see what's out there, learn new stuff.
Heck yeah, it's all part of it. Where can people find you, Alex?
Personally?
Well, like Instagram,
usually
Facebook.
in the mountains on a horse somewhere.
Where you should be. I like it.
Yeah, my Instagram is AdventurousAlex22, I think. I've got a Facebook too. I don't really use Facebook much, just for Marketplace.
Heck yeah, you get some spoken deals on Marketplace.
I'm pretty quiet on Instagram, but I am there. So
yeah,
that's where I'm at.
Well, cool.
But yeah, we didn't talk much about being the Area 2 rep, but I'm also the Area 2 rep. So you can email me, find me on the Bowhunters of Wyoming website if you got a bone to pick or something.
Sounds good. Yeah, sorry. I think it was a team effort.
You said that, but we didn't really expand on it, which is fine.
No, I let us down the shed hunting rabbit hole, and I don't think we ever fully recovered. We did okay for a little while. We kind of got it back on the rails, and then went back off. Yeah. But that's half the fun of it. So whenever you're done with your shed hunting season, let me know, and I'll have you back on, and we can recap and compare seasons, and tie it in on me as well, obviously.
For sure. Yeah. No, I appreciate you having me on. This season's been slow, but it's been good. I hit my goal of two sets, and I can't complain. But we'll see. It's not quite over yet.
No, we still got some time. I think I'm gonna skip work tomorrow and go look for antlers after this conversation. You've motivated me to. You know what? I might not be able to shed hunt a week from now. I'm gonna skip work and go look tomorrow. You can.
Yep. In moderation.
In moderation. Yes. Thank you. Well, cool, man. Alex, is awesome having you on. Yeah, I'll get back with you and have you back on once our season's all wrapped up. And if you got anything else for me, you got my number and everything. So for everyone listening, you can find Bowhunters of Wyoming at bowhuntersofwyoming.org. And you can get a hold of either Alex or I at president@bowhuntersofwyoming.org or area2rep at bowhuntersofwyoming.org. And I would highly encourage you to join both TRCP and Bow, just to make sure that you not only stay up to date with what's going on with hunting and fishing in Wyoming, but also have that avenue to have your voice heard when some of these things come down and may propose future changes for what we love to do. So thanks for listening. Alex, thanks for coming on. That was awesome. Take care, man.
Thanks. How many listens have we been getting lately on the podcast?